I do want to give some Nebraska thoughts on the sound, but before I give more overarching thoughts on Nebraska, I thought that their head coach encapsulated the day better than I could. So I want to start with what Matt Rhule said after the game. Here it is.
I was proud of that football team today. I was proud. They didn't back down. They had some really tough breaks. They had some things really go against them, even the way we started. And they competed. It was the first time. It's the first time since I've been here that I felt a championship mindset in the locker room. Along with the championship mindset, as those who compete know, comes utter disappointment when you lose. So that part's hard. It's hard for the guys. But I saw a group of guys, even at the very end, take the field, going out there to make one more play. Have a chance to compete against one of the best teams in the country.
I just got to give that coaching staff and that team a lot of credit because I saw them in back-to-back weeks. And yeah, both of them were losses, but boy, both of them felt a lot different, didn't they? If you're a Nebraska fan, I think that you're proud of what your guys did on Saturday in the Horseshoe. I think you are. And in particular, after answering the bell of adversity from the previous week, getting beat by 49 against Indiana. And I thought that the two games encapsulated what a coaching staff really has to do. And they have to do this weekly, because it's a case study really in terms of a human nature. And sometimes we can get away from what our best is and we can get away from our strengths. And so many times I firmly believe that being great at something is not about not having weaknesses. Being great at something is identifying your strengths and then building processes and habits that only enhance those strengths. That's how you become great. And I think that that's from an individual standpoint, but I think that the same can be true in group dynamics and certainly true in terms of football teams. Every team is going to have some weaknesses. And the teams that focus too hard on correcting their weaknesses. Now, this is going to sound crazy because, yes, you've got to address your weaknesses. But if you focus too hard on trying to correct your weaknesses or trying to do something that maybe is not your strength for some, element of surprise or something, or you get away from what your strength is or your identity is just because maybe you're not paying attention, you won't play your best. You just won't. Okay. And in the last 2 weeks, we've had a case study in that with Nebraska football. Nebraska has a veteran defense that's incredibly tough at the line of scrimmage. We saw that a year ago. We saw that for the majority of this season. And you've got to understand that they've got a calling card. They've got a fingerprint. They've got an identity on that side of the football. And I would argue, and I think they would as well, in particular after talking to them over the last couple of weeks, that their calling card is stopping the run. That's what they can do. If you were saying what do you believe that you can do? We can stop the run. And against Indiana, they built a game plan that was built to stop the pass. And then all of a sudden, Indiana's looking up and they're like, well, hold on. That structure invites us to run the football. And Indiana ran it so well against Nebraska to the tune of, almost 220 yards, something along those lines. Certainly a season high that Nebraska gave up on the ground. And Indiana torched them on the ground, torched them. And there were so many times that in passing downs, Nebraska would get really wide in their defensive line techniques and give up large bubbles in the interior of their defense just from the structure. And Indiana alertly and very smart, by the way, took it. Take what the defense gives. And they took it and just inside handoffs. So they would go for 8, 9, 10, 15 yards, not even being touched until they got to the second and third level. And so we get back on the phone with the Nebraska coaches after that loss, and we're preparing now for the Ohio State game. And I'm talking with Tony White, and I hope I'm not giving up too much information. I think Tony is a great coordinator. There's a reason they gave him, $1.5 million, $1.6 million, because everybody's coming after Tony White. He's really good, okay? And he gets on the Zoom. I really appreciate and enjoy talking football with Tony White. And he gets on the Zoom, and he's one of the only people that calls me Jay, but he was like, Jay, I'm really sorry, man. I was like, sorry? Don't be sorry to me. What are you talking about? And he was like, no. And I can tell he's distraught. This is Wednesday, right? This is the middle of the week after that loss to Indiana, now preparing for Ohio State. And he was like, that won't happen again. It will not happen again. And that's when I knew. I was like, boom, I knew it. I didn't have to ask him any more questions. We actually didn't talk about what I'm about to say to you. But I knew right then and there that their game plan for Ohio State was going to be like, listen, hell or high water, you're not running the football on us. If you want to throw it to those great wide receivers, go ahead. But hell or high water, you will not run the football on us because that's our identity. So we're going to go down with our best. That was what Nebraska wanted to do. And you know what? Kudos to them because that's exactly what happened. And Ohio State leaned into that for them. And so it became a closer game than it probably would have if Ohio State would have thrown the ball around a little bit or tried to push the ball down the field, because Nebraska was just not going to allow what happened the previous week to happen to them in this game. They were not going to give up those not rinky dink, that's not the right word. Those little passing down, easy handoffs in the middle of like kind of a bubble oriented defense. When I say bubble, that means there was like one defensive lineman over the center, and then the next defensive lineman was like outside of the tight end. And there's just a huge bubble there. There's no down lineman against Indiana, and Indiana would just take it. That never happened against Ohio State. They got in there. They played at times bear defense, which means they're covering up every offensive lineman. There were a lot of times when their big two defensive tackles, they were always in the interior, and they were just saying, like, you're going to have to move us to run the football. And I appreciated that about the adjustment that Nebraska made, because they walked into that game and they said, we might go down, but if we go down, we are going down with our best. And that's what happened on the defensive side. Kudos to them, man, because again, 2.1 yards per carry, they did exactly what they set out to achieve, and that is to stop the run. Now, on the flip side, if you're watching their offense, it's both tantalizing and maddening at the same time with their young quarterback, Dylan Raiola. He does some things that I really love, and then he does some things that I really hate. And I know hate's a strong word, but that's just the truth. There are far too many times when something is there, and I'm talking about like a big moment, like a touchdown throw, and he overthrows it. And then there are things that he does, and you're like, that's awesome. And I remember vividly this happening during the game against Ohio State. Early in the game, Ohio State brought one more blitzer than Nebraska had pass protectors. So you've got to throw hot. You have to, at that point as a quarterback, protect yourself. The numbers suggest that you have to get the football out. He's got an in-breaking route. That route's eyes, I believe it was Ja'Cory Barney, is all over the quarterback, so the route knows he's hot. It's kind of a side adjust hot right over the football. And Raiola didn't throw it. He didn't understand. He did not see the pressure in terms of the numbers of the pressure from Ohio State and that they couldn't block it. So that happens early in the game. Then later in the game, the same exact thing happens and he backpedals and throws the hot, and it ends up being kind of a touchdown called, and then they reversed it but scored right away regardless. He learned from that. So I love the things he does in that respect, but then there are times when he has guys open and he overthrows them. He had Barney open in the end zone, overthrows him. He had the tight end open against Illinois, overthrows him. Those things can't happen. They just can't happen, and he has got to make sure that he hits those routes. For all the skills that he has and the arm talent that he has, he can't miss those routes. And Nebraska fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I personally believe that he needs to play with a more solid foundation in terms of his footwork and platform. All the off-platform throws are fabulous. Okay, I get it. Like, he's got talent for days, and he can drop down and he can throw off platform and off balance, and he's got that talent. The problem is that you got to give me layups as well. Okay? So, yeah, you can hit the 360 dunk. You can dunk from the foul line. You can hit it from the logo. All these things to make a basketball analogy, but you got to make layups. You got to hit the 18-foot jumper. Okay. And as a quarterback, you have to understand that there are moments that you need to play with your footwork and your platform connected to the structure of your offense. And when your platform and your footwork are connected to the structure of your offense, your mind is connected to the structure of the offense. So what ends up happening is that your timing and your accuracy take a nice bump. And when that happens, then your offense is really moving efficiently. See, all the other things are for when things break down and when you need to become an eraser as a quarterback. When you need to erase somebody else's mistake on your offense, then your ability to get off platform and get unconnected from your feet, that pays dividends. But you cannot play that way all the time. You just can't. So the fact that he misses some of those throws, to me, lies in this equation of like understanding when he needs to be connected to the offense and when he needs to be unconnected from the offense. And only time can tell you that. And I can, and by the way, this is why I still get excited about Dylan Raiola, is because not many quarterbacks can make plays off platform, unconnected, off schedule, as an eraser. Okay? Not many guys can do that. So when you have that ability, you have the chance to be great. But the problem is that you got to do the fundamentals as well. Someone needs to work with his footwork. Someone needs to work with his connectivity to the passing structure. Because too often, he's taking things that should be connected and he's trying to make them unconnected. He's a young player. I think that can change, and I think that it will change, and I think that it'll get better. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.